Okay, I think we can get started. Welcome everyone.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you for joining us today in this regional webinar. I'm Baher Asmat. I'm with the ICANN Global Stakeholder Engagement Team. I'm Regional Vice President for the Middle East region. So the title of this webinar, sorry for this, is Understanding DNS over TLS and DNS over HTTPS. So, or DoT and DOH for short. So those are relatively new technologies that add privacy to the DNS traffic by basically encrypting the DNS traffic. And the deployment of these technologies increasing particularly in browsers. And it does have some significant impact and implications. And today we're joined by Adiel Akplogan, ICANN's Vice President of Technical Operations. Adiel is going to talk about these technologies, give some history and background, and also shed some light on that is underway in this area. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Adiel.
Thank you, Baher. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
I guess. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Baher. And welcome, everyone. Happy to see you all online to explore this topic today. The way I will do this is to go through the presentation, and probably we'll have a few minutes at the end to take questions and answer them. You can always put your question in the chat, quote them in questions so that our colleagues online can pick them, highlight them, so that we can answer them at the end. So I'm going to take you through an introduction to the DOH and DoT, what they are, and also briefly touch on some of the implication of this new way of doing DNS resolution. Up front, I will just say that this is not a new DNS or a new way of how the DNS protocol itself works. It's just a way of adding some security feature to the way the DNS works in general. So you all seeing my slide, I guess, because I'm sharing. Yeah?
Yes, Adiel.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for it. So when we talk about the DOH and DoT, there are definitely, and what interests most people is the impact of the way the DNS work and some extension on policy. But when we talk about policy here, we're talking about operation policy, not public policy and so on. As ISP or network operator, what that means to you in terms of the policy you use to run your network and operate. So don't expect or see policy as public policy matter. This presentation is based on a document that the Office of the CTO has released a few months ago, October 003, which lay out what DoT and DOH are and highlight some of the implications that it may have from operational perspective. You can read the document online. It will give you furthermore detail about what we are going to talk about. There is another document that talks about the DOH and DoT released by the SAC for those of you who are familiar with ICANN environment, the ESAC is the Security and Stability Advisory Committee of ICANN. And the ESAC has released a document as well, ESAC 109, which also talk about the issue, but from a different angle. The document of ESAC go a little bit deeper. It's a longer document, but our document mainly focus on the implication in terms of filtering and monitoring, the policy implication, the interested party, and ICANN position. So this is more from ICANN org perspective. So what are the different components of the DNS? I think it's important for the audience to understand this. Some of you already have a good understanding, but I'm trying to, this is just a reminder so that we can see the global picture and understand where DOH and DOT impact all of this. So there are different components of how the DNS works. We have the stub, the recursive server, and then the authoritative server. What we call stub is usually what you have in your device. Is the part or the component of the DNS ecosystem that is hosted in your device, either your laptop or your mobile phone or any other device in your house that is connected to the internet and use the DNS. So that is what we call the stub resolver. Usually the stub resolver will communicate to the recursive, which is the parts of the DNS that collect all the questions. The DNS work in terms of question and response. So all the question comes from the client, and those questions are or go to the recursive resolver, which has the responsibility to go and find the answer and send them back to the client at the end. So the other element is the recursive resolver that all devices have configured in there. So the client is configured to know who is their recursive resolver, and the recursive resolver then know how to find information for you. Then the other part of the other component of the ecosystem are the authoritative servers for the different domain name, and also the roots is one set of authoritative server at the top of the DNS tree. So all the green line that you see on this slide are encrypted communication. What does it mean? It means that all the question and the recursive query to find the answer are unencrypted, meaning anyone observing the traffic on between those different elements can clearly see what the question is, what the set of answers are, what are the different steps. So it is a clear test communication to say. So, but that is how the DNS was designed originally, to be open, clear for anyone to have access to. So the issue that we're going to talk about today will touch on one aspect of this communication. It's not going to address the whole interaction or all these arrows, but only the completely left side of this this graph. So basically, the communication between the stub, the client, and the recursive resolver. So DOT and DOH, DNS encryption at this stage only cover this part of the graph. So again, when we talk about DNS encryption, we will only focus on the communication between the stub and the recursive server. Until recently, stub resolver appear only on operating system. What does it mean? It means that if you want to configure your stub, it is in your OS, the application that makes your device run. And that is the only place where queries are originated from. And you set it up that way. But with what we are seeing coming, that is moving a little bit up on the layer. And particularly, for instance, browser or application that use browser-like technology added their own stub resolver. That means on your device, you can have your own application having a stub resolver, but then the browser as application that allow you to have access to web information will also have their own stub resolver, meaning that they will now start doing DNS as well. So the standard for DNS encryption assumes that clients will be acting as a stub resolver, and server will be acting as a recursive resolver. That when we say client here, that is the application client, and then the server, which is the server side of any client-server application. So we highlight the acting part here is to say that they, in fact, substitute themselves to the DNS per se. So they will not be like having a lot of information, but they will act for that specific query that goes through either the browser or any clients in this case. So how to achieve that encryption? First of all, the objective of encrypting the DNS traffic now is to make sure that what is happening between the different components we talked about originally. In this specific case, the stub and the recursive resolver is encrypted, so that people looking at the traffic cannot see what is going on. So there are two standards that have been approved recently to address that. One is DNS over TLS, DoT, and the other one is DNS over HTTPS, DOH. There are other non-standard protocols there, which different people, different providers have used, but their deployment is very, very marginal and has never been standardized per se. So the two real standards here are DOH and DOT. DOT being specified in RFC 7858 and DOH in 8484. So if you want to have more detailed information from the protocol point of view and technological point of view, I will really encourage you to read those two RFCs to have the information. DOT and DOH have a large amount of overlap, but the differences are important from network operational perspective, because the two technologies work differently. But at the end of the day, they both use some set of encryption mechanism that makes the overlap happen. So the first one, DNS over TLS, how does it work? Basically, in the case of TLS, the stub resolver will start a TLS session with the resolver, and when the session is established, then the client will start sending a regular DNS traffic over the TLS, which means the TLS session happened between the DNS server, the recursive server in this case, and the stub resolver. So that is a regular TLS session, as we will see it with other applications like email or other, or even HTTPS. And I'm not talking about DNS over HTTP. HTTPS itself will use TLS at some point, or other application, WhatsApp and other can use TLS. In the case of TLS, the authentication of the resolver is optional because there is no need for any authentication for starting a TLS session, but it is needed to add another level of security by preventing on-path attack. That means before the TLS session is established, somebody can divert the traffic and establish the TLS session with a different server. It's still a TLS session, but it's not the original server that you want to establish that session with, because before the TLS session is established, information are exchanged openly on the network. So authentication adds another level of security for TLS, the TLS session, and then DNS over TLS. TLS is easy to set up because what you just need is an IP address of the domain name of the resolver. The port number is fixed, it's TLS, and as soon as you know that, you establish a TLS communication with that resolver, and the resolver will to send you all the information to establish a proper TLS channel for encryption. So it's easy, it's simple, and doesn't require a lot of operational setup. So if you can establish, or you can use TLS on other application, and your DNS, your recursive server can operate the TLS, you can easily do DNS over TLS. DNS over HTTP is a little bit complicated because, as you can see, it is over another client-server protocol, which is HTTPS. So we are now talking about an application level of doing the DNS. So basically, what happened for DNS over HTTPS is that the stub resolver will start first an HTTPS session, like a normal web browser will do when you're surfing the internet. The browser uses nowadays HTTPS by default to secure the content of your browsing and information. But in this specific case, it will start an HTTPS session with the resolver. And when the session is established, then the stub resolver, which is now within your browser, will start sending DNS traffic that has been wrapped in HTTP query over the resolver. So you can see now that here it is the client and the application, which is your browser, that will use the HTTPS protocol to establish a session and start encrypting DNS traffic within a regular HTTP exchange, right? If the HTTP protocol or service running is version 2, then the server can also push DNS content to the client, which the client can use or discard. That means other information that the server or the recursive server want to push to the client by default, it can do that. So more the HTTP version is modern, more you can add some additional functionality. Authentication of the resolver is mandatory in this case because it is mandatory in HTTPS. Simple, because if you are using HTTPS, you have to authenticate the server before doing HTTPS. So non-authenticated communication will not work in the case of DNS over HTTP while on DNS over TLS, it's not mandatory but highly recommended. It's harder to set up because, contrary to DoT, where you just need the name or the IP address, here you need a URL because, again, this is going through HTTPS, wrapped HTTPS request. So you will need an URL because HTTPS, of course, works over URL. DOH can reuse existing HTTPS connection because the service is based on the URL. So if the connection is established and the URL is already known, this can be reused in the case of DOH without having to reestablish a new HTTPS connection for a new DNS query. So as you can see, we are now talking about the same DNS, the same client, the same stub asking the recursive resolver the same set of questions. The only difference is that now those questions are wrapped into other protocol, but not only, they are encrypted. The encrypted mean that you will see a traffic, but that traffic is encrypted. In the case of DOH, it is actually embedded into HTTPS traffic. So what you will see is an HTTPS traffic and not a DNS traffic. So that has some policy implication in terms of the way traffic pass through your network and the control that you can have on those traffic. The objective of DOH and DoT is to increase privacy for the user perspective. Because when we are saying that nobody can see the traffic, that means you are hiding your traffic from anyone that is trying to see what is going on in your communication. So that adds some privacy to end user at this stage, because it is the end user that originates the DNS query from his device. So privacy. It increased insurance for user DNS traffic, but again, here is the user side. Everything that happened after the recursive is not encrypted. So we are talking here from the user perspective, user to recursive. And that is where most of the private data are seen. Circumvention of DNS filtering for security, yes, because as soon as you are embedding your traffic into another protocol like HTTPS, the traffic is seen as HTTPS, and as we know, most of the firewall will be looking for DNS traffic, for instance, to apply filtering that they want. But in this case, they won't see the DNS traffic. They will see HTTPS traffic, which is kind of bypassing those security rules. So you will very easily circumvent any file filtering that is based on DNS traffic. You can circumvent also, DNS filtering, but on local policy, which means beyond your own local network, you can be submitted to some requirement to filter DNS traffic at the local country level, and that can also be circumvented. One of the issues that there is a lot of speculation around, which is worrying also some people, is the unwanted centralization of the DNS resolution. That cannot be detected. Why? Because now we don't know where, we don't by default know where the traffic is going. So every browser can have their own DNS over HTTPS server, and by default, push you to use only theirs. or their partner's DNS over HTTPS server, which means the centralization or the number of resolver that has significant traffic will diminish significantly because they are being done or be dictated, quote unquote, by your browser. The last implication is the speed of the DNS response, because again, the DNS, the way it works itself will continue, meaning you send a query, the resolver will go check the response through the authoritative server and send you the response back. That process is still there. Now, on top of that, there is the encryption side. And that additional step may impact the speed of the DNS response, because there is a new a layer of exchange on top of that. Again, this is still new. This is still being implemented. So the clear evidence of all of this is not completely set yet, but those are observations that from technology side we can say can happen. But we need to have a more broader deployment to be able to effectively measure this. So, well, for any end user, privacy is something that we all, run our, chase nowadays, because we want to make sure that what we're doing online remain private. So privacy in general is something good, and it gives confidence to end user when they are surfing the internet. So adding some set of privacy to how DNS traffic work is good. So it protects user from observation from outsider on the path between the client and the stub and the resolver. It's also prevent attacker from changing the traffic in response. So that means the attacker between your stub and your resolver there. If somebody is trying to manipulate the response at that level, encryption will prevent that, because now that person cannot see the traffic anymore and intercept and do that. Using DoT and DOH also increase the security of the DNS at the same level as HTTPS increase the security of the web traffic in general. So it adds the security, it adds privacy. So in general, it's something good from user and usability and security of the internet in general. So we talk about circumventing some filtering as some of the policy implication of this. What does it mean? Again, it means that as network operator, you are often require or have to do it because of the way you want to manage your network to filter or monitor your DNS traffic for the benefit of the user. Sometimes it's to prevent, prevent malware, to prevent some other fishy activities, and you can detect that through the DNS traffic. And so you set DNS filtering, but that is a good filtering practice to protect your customer. It can be also for parental control and so on. And this can be easily circumvented through DNS over HTTP or TLS. Sometimes the filtering happen at the middle box level. That means middle box, we're talking about your, for instance, your modem and router at home when you are connected to the internet. Those are middle bus, and those middle bus sometimes have DNS filtering. So to ensure some policy, different one. And that, again, will be impacted by any encryption of the DNS, because those middle bus won't see the traffic to be able to apply their filtering, but will see encrypted traffic that is embedded, for instance, into HTTPS. So they will see HTTPS traffic. From government perspective as well, some government have mandate their operator to do some filtering, and this can also impact that, because to be able to filter DNS traffic, you need to see the traffic. But if you are not part of the encryption mechanism, then you will not be able to see anything, and basically bypass without your consent that those government policy. The unwanted centralization part, as I mentioned, I briefly explained earlier, when you implement encryption for the DNS, you can easily change where your OS or your application goes for DNS resolution. That means now you are giving application the ability to go wherever they want. So instead of relying on the DNS setup in your application, suddenly the user will be using the DNS setup in their OS. Instead of relying on the one in their OS, they will rely on the one in the application. So it will be much more obvious if a client change their DNS setup to use the application instead of the one imposed, quote unquote, in the OS. So far, that centralization effort has been implemented only by Firefox and basically in the US. What they mean is that, as browser, they only trust a certain resolver operator to keep Firefox users that are private. So this is you see the level that this is going. So the browser will say, well, privacy is very high in my priorities. So for that, I don't trust the iOS resolver. I trust few resolver that I handpick. And because I want to make sure that what I offer my customer, I can have control over it from one point to another point. So I will give you the option to use DNS over HTTPS with only server that I allow you to choose. So that restrains your choice, but at the same time, well, somehow it adds some privacy to information that you share. So they have a list of trust provider, and today that list has only 2 operators. So you see the centralization part. So only 2 operators. If everybody around the globe using Firefox will have to send their traffic only to 2 resolver, that is pretty big issue in terms of centralization. And centralization has all the problem that we know, specifically resiliency and ossification. That means the underlying principle of the internet itself will be a little bit kind of harm because everyone will have the same point of failure, which will be bad thing for the resiliency overall. Well, yeah, speed of response, again, starting a TLS session is slower than just sending a DNS query plain test as we used to do. So that will add certainly some time delay. Overload resolver might have a long TLS startup time, yes, if the server that is running the DNS over TLS is already overloaded for different reasons. Having to start a TLS session maybe delay. DOH also required converting DNS query to HTTP message, which adds another time to this, which can slow the whole DNS query. As I said originally, these are kind of observation, but there is no already a very well broad and wide study to confirm this. What we have seen till now is that 90% of the response are slightly slower than, and the last 10% that was slower in that study is not because of the protocol itself. It's because TCP is more is used and it's more reliable than UDP. So it's faster because it used its TCP where there is no need for resending several times, while UDP do that. So you see that it's because it uses TCP that it's faster, not because of the DNS in general, not the DNS over HTTPS. I will conclude this presentation by giving a few line on where I can stand in all of this, because we are talking about this in just giving everyone and you all an overview of that. But the role of ICANN is very, very limited in this. We trust and believe that privacy is a good thing to do. In some circumstances, filtering DNS is also something good for the user. Application and OS, they have sufficient information to make network control decision to enforce legal mandate and so on. But fundamentally, from operational perspective, we believe that DNS data should be protected, because no protected DNS data can lead to security issue in general. So anything that protects the operational aspect of the DNS, we think it's a good thing to do. But we will continue to monitor the impact of those things on the security and stability of the DNS overall, and highlight where there are challenges, as we are doing in this presentation. Some updates. Mozilla is expanding their program in the US, only in the US for obvious legislation reason. Microsoft also announced that they will add DOH and DoT in their upgrade resolver when it comes to Windows. And more network operators get involved in the discussion and implementing this to see what impact it will have on their network. So that's what I will say. There are discussion going on at the IETF level on this, and particularly on the operational side, and other way of encrypting DNS traffic, and even on how to actually take this to the second part of the graph I used originally, meaning the encrypting the traffic between the recursive resolver and the authoritative server, which is not encrypted now, and there are discussions now to in the deprive working group at the IETF to see how to extend that. I will that is the last slide of this presentation, and I will happily take a pause here and open the floor for question and interaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Adiel, for this presentation. I believe we've got a few questions and comments in the chat, and I'll ask Fahad to read them so that you can answer them. Fahad?
Yes, thank you, Bahar, and thank you, Adiel. Hello, everybody. This is Fahad Batayni from ICANN. So we have a couple of comments and questions. So John Todd provides a comment. He says, worth noting, DNS over TLS self-hosting and DOH, for that matter, requires a bit of detailed focus if you are using an IP address and not a name to distribute to your clients, since your cert must contain the IP address. It's even more difficult to add an IPv6 IP address into a cert, or at least that has been the case historically. Possible but challenging. Any comments from your side, Adiel, before I move on?
No, that is totally true, and those are some of the operational aspects of this. That more and more deployment happen, more we will see them. But what I will say is that more those operational challenges are highlighted, they will be solved in a way or another by the community. Yeah.
Thank you, Adiel. We have a question from Suvash Katka. He says, you said authentication of the resolver is mandatory. His question is that due to security viewpoint, or is it are there any other reasons?
Yeah, it's purely security, because HTTPS by default require that the other parts of the secure connection be authenticated, because you want to know where you want to validate your secure channel. So it is purely a security reason, and in the case of HTTP DNS over HTTPS is because the traffic is embedded in HTTPS, and HTTPS protocol itself mandates the authentication of the server.
Thank you, Adiel. We have a question from Sakar Kudasaini, and he says, so with DoT, DOH, will every browser/application maintain its separate cache? Will that result in same query being sent again for each application's query?
Well, the cache, as you know, the cache is handled not at the client level, but at the recursive resolver level for majoritarily. So again, as explained at the beginning, this is not changing the way the DNS works. So if you somebody is running a DNS and DNS over HTTPS recursive resolver, yeah, it will have a cache option there, but we have to see this as from the resolver point of view, not from the client point of view, and that will happen again at the level of the resolver, which is what is managed by your network operator or your IT team. So it's a normal resolver, and it will have all the functionality of a normal DNS resolver.
Thank you, Adiel. We have a question from Fidia Shabrina. She says, or he says, I'm not sure. In policy implications, why is the circumvention for DNS filtering for local policy differentiated than those mandated by governments? Is local policy not under governments?
No, not always, because local policy can be different. I would say, for instance, a company can have some policy related to, when you are using their network about filtering some content. That is the policy of that organization, and usually about, if you are using your company network, for instance, there are some filtering for security reasons. I mentioned, for instance, even parental control is a policy. When you decide to start preventing your kids to access some content, is a policy-based filtering. So when we say local, we say policy that are applied to your operators, to your company. And those can be translated into DNS filtering as well. So that is different from those mandated by the government, because that is more this is mandated. So if you are, you have to apply, abide by those governmental mandated filtering, which is different from what you can choose as company, personal security filtering practice. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
Okay, so a comment from John Todd. As a side benefit, DoT/DOH also forced DNS into all TCP mode, which is a prerequisite for more advanced features of DNS, which may require larger query/reply conversations, avoids fragmentation issues, and also is a benefit for anti-spoofing assumptions of traffic, since a full TCP handshake is required for a query to be placed. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, that is a side benefit of this in terms of operability of TCP. But as we know, till now, most of the DNS traffic is UDP, right? And as I was saying, my before last slide, yeah, we're seeing that the DNS over HTTP or DNS over TLS measurement shows that the speed impact did not, or the speed degradation does not impact the TCP, using TCP for the DNS. So it is something good if everybody starts using TCP by default, but there is still you know, some steps to reach that level. But clearly, it has those advantage. But at the end of the day, security is always that there is a need to find the right balance between operational effectiveness and the implication of those security measures. Time would tell us in the long run how this will actually and really have impact.
Okay, thank you, Adiel. We have a question from Suvash Khatkan. He says, regarding encryption mechanisms, what is the encryption techniques or mechanisms that are used?
Well, in terms of encryption, as I say, on TLS, DNS over TLS and or DNS over HTTPS, they will use the same encryption mechanism that are allow for those two protocols. Again, this is not about changing the protocol themselves, TLS or HTTPS themselves. They will use all the encryption mechanisms that are allowed for HTTPS or TLS. The DNS traffic is the DNS itself will not define any new protocol to use. So any protocol that you can use to do TLS or to do HTTPS will work fine.
Okay, thank you, Adiel. So moving on, we have a question from Swapnil Patnikar. Does anyone know of load testing tools for DOH?
Load testing tool? Can you?
Yes, load testing tools, correct. Load.
Oh, load testing tool to see the impacts in terms of load. I am not very aware of any existing pre-built tool for that. Haven't seen any here. None that I'm aware of that exists. But I will be surprised if somebody has not already put something out there. I haven't tested it.
Okay, a comment from John Todd. He says, Chrome will be launching DOH tests in May in their releases. This will automatically shift from DO53 to DOH only when the operating system is already configured to use a resolver that supports DOH. In brackets, there is an embedded list of DOH providers. This theoretically does not change the policy being used, but simply shifts the protocol. This will present a large shift in traffic, but only for people who are only using centralized resolvers already. Would you like to comment on that?
Well, we will see how that will work. because the part that they're saying that this is not going to change the policy being used, but shift the protocol is good theoretically, but we'll see how that will play out. It will certainly, yes, create a shift in traffic. But how many, the main problem with setting those up in browser is how many people, I mean, end user go to the setup of their browser to choose which server they use for their proxy, or even mingle with the setup of their browser. Very few. So the risk is there if the browser vendors start setting up stuff in there by default, or limiting the choice there. If they say this is not going to impact the centralization, while they are putting information there for customer, and customer don't know how, or don't have the time, or don't have all the knowledge to go and change it, that still poses a problem. But we'll see how this, practically will impact the path of the traffic. Yeah.
Thank you, Adiel. A question from Abdelminam Galila. Is there any ICANN arm to ask old DNS providers to start propagating DOH?
No. The straight answer is no. ICANN will never take position or encourage or discourage DOH per se. What we will do is to present the fact, what we know about the protocol, the advantage and disadvantage. But in terms of technology choice in this specific case, it is for all operators to decide what is good for them, for their customer, and what is in line with their local environment. What we will say by default is that, and again, to repeat what I said before, is that anything that protect privacy is good. Anything that improves security and resiliency of the DNS is good. And one critical aspect for us from ICANN perspective is that encrypting traffic prevents a certain type of attack on the DNS, so that adds security. And from that purpose, it is good. But there is no arm of ICANN that will actually go out in campaign to encourage people to deploy either DOH or DoT.
Thank you, Adiel. A question from Mohammed Hafiz. If DoT or DOH can guarantee the privacy between the user and resolver, how about the traffic between the resolver and other DNS like authoritative servers?
Yeah, that is currently that is not yet provided, but as I mentioned, there is a working group within the IETF, which is the deprive working group, that is looking into that, looking into a new standard to allow the encryption between potentially between the resolver and the authoritative. Right now, that is not yet there, but probably in the coming month or year, we will see a new protocol that will allow that, new extension that will probably allow that. But it will be different from what we are talking about, because between the resolver and the authoritative, there is no HTTPS to be able to do, no browser to use. So, but it is something that is being looked at. And if you are interested in that, I will encourage you to join the deprive working group, which is an open working group at the IETF.
Okay, a question from Khaldun Sinjab. What DNS server software supports these protocols?
What DNS?
Server software support these protocols.
Oh, I think all of them now support it. I don't have the list in front of me, but I think most of the DNS server are providing extensions to be able to support DOH and DoT.
Okay, so there is a comment from, okay, so there is a question from Abdelminam Galila. Does DOH or DoT affect the business of ISPs regarding to statistics?
Regarding statistics,
Yes.
I'm not sure I get that. Which aspect of statistic, meaning monitoring DNS traffic, or I don't know which statistic.
So maybe we'll just await Abdelminam to provide more information on that. Okay, so there are a number of there are plenty of questions and comments in the chat pod. I do not think we will be able to go through all of them. So I really encourage everybody. I mean, if you have a follow-up question that was not addressed during this presentation or during the open flow Q&A session, just write to me, and I'll be happy to get an answer for you. But maybe just looking, going like really randomly through some of the questions from folks who didn't get a chance to ask. So there is a question from Maqsood Abbaspur. Do we lose caching benefits in local resolvers? Is there any measurement of its effect on load of root DNS?
Sure. If the traffic is not going through the local resolver and using circumventing the local resolver and using the one in the browser, of course you lose your cache capability on the. You lose is well you don't lose it. The cache will still be there for traffic that goes through your local resolver, but again that will be only useful to the point that your clients use that resolver. If they are not using it, then you know you will still be caching for requests that go through your resolver. So the caching is going to happen elsewhere. Personally, you will definitely not have, you won't see the traffic that is not going through your local resolver. And that is one of the things we're talking about, circumventing your local infrastructure somehow.
Okay, thank you, Adiel. So I think we'll close the Q&A queue here, and I'll hand it over back to Bahar.
Okay, thank you, Fahad, and thank you, Adiel, for this presentation. Seems from the questions and comments that it was quite interesting. And as Fahad mentioned, if there are still questions or comments not addressed, please write to Fahad, and we'll make sure that Adiel answers them. So we still have a couple of minutes. So before we get everyone go, we want to run a quick poll on this session. So basically, we have two questions. One is how useful was the session? How did you find the session or the webinar? So this is question one you see on the screen. And then the other question is, would you like to see similar webinars in the future? So for the second question, you can answer with yes or no. So you can take like 2 minutes to answer the poll, and then we're gonna end the call. Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Adiel, again for this interesting session, and good day, everyone. Bye.